Phoebe Robinson is a stand-up comic, which means that often her everyday experiences become points of comedic fodder. As a Black woman in America, she maintains sometimes you need to have a sense of humor to deal with the absurdity of what you're handed on the daily. Robinson has experienced her fair share over the years. She's been unceremoniously regulated to the role of the Black friend, as she is somehow the authority on all things racial. She's been questioned about her love of U2 and Billy Joel. Isn't that white people music? She's been called uppity for having an opinion in the workplace. She's been followed around stores by security guards. And yes, people do ask her whether they can touch her hair all the time. Now, she's ready to take these topics to the page, and she's going to make you laugh as she's doing it. All right, guys, welcome back to BLK Girl Reads Season 2. Okay, I'm Jan.
I'm Joy. And I'm Jasmine. I'm visiting.
For our first episode, we're reading You Can't Touch My Hair and Other Things That I Still Have to Say by Phoebe Robinson. All right, so let's get right into it. Let's do ratings. Joy, what did you think?
I'm giving it a 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any non-spoiler reasoning, or you want to stick to when we get into discussion?
I'll get into it.
Okay. Jazz, what do you think?
I would give it a 3.5.
Okay. All right. And I'm sticking at a solid 3. So right in between you two. All right. Well, it doesn't seem like any of us have really an explanation without getting into spoilers. So just a disclaimer that there will be spoilers from here on out. And let's get right into it. What were your guys' first impression, like with the title and then with the overall book? So first title and then overall book when you were done.
I think coming off of the season finale, I was up for it. I was really excited for let's continue the discussion, especially because we're going to have Jasmine as a guest again. And then it kind of just, I don't know, it wasn't what I expected. So, yeah. What about you, Jazz?
Just a reminder, it's told by a comedian.
Right.
So, yeah, it was way different than the last nonfiction book we read.
Right.
We all read together.
I didn't know she was a comedian either going into it. So I came in completely blind. So I had no clue. And then I heard the first few sentences. It's kind of goofy.
I feel like if you didn't know she was a comedian and coming into it blind, especially after reading Elizabeth Liba's book, I would be completely thrown off. And you know what? When I read the title and I knew it was Phoebe Robinson, I knew it was going to be funny. But the title still drew me in, You Can't Touch My Hair and Other Things I Still Have to Say. Yes, definitely. I feel like I'm going to relate to this book. And then when I started reading it, I felt a little annoyed. Just because she her sense of humor, she fits in so much cringy slang that is also outdated. I wanted to stop listening almost immediately, but I would say after the first 2 chapters, I had gotten used to it and started relating to the book a little bit more. But it was definitely annoying me a lot.
Okay. I'm glad you said
I listened to it. So her Valley Girl twang and with all the cringy slang, that's I can't even explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say my first impressions of it, I felt the same way you felt, Jan, where I was drawn in because I can't tell you, if I had a nickel for every time I had to tell people, you can't touch my hair, or, I don't get an opportunity to say that because they already have their hand in my hair without asking. I would have a nice little savings account there. And it'll be good. So yeah, the title drew me in. I didn't know a whole lot about Phoebe Robinson, but seeing her on the cover of the book, she has her hair natural, curly. She's looking, her face expression says, again. I still have to deal with this again. So I'm all for it. Just seeing the book and the title. What I will say, I felt the same. You mentioned it was outdated. So this book came out in 2016. And fun fact, I read this in 2016 when it first came out. And that was a really interesting time for us in 2016. That was like one of the worst years prior to COVID, in my opinion.
Hello.
So it was like reliving it, but also she has some nostalgic things in there as well. And then the other part of it, on top of her being a Black woman, she's also from Cleveland, Ohio. So there was a lot of things in there that I'm like, I'll stick this out. I got to see where this goes, even with the cringy, annoying little things that she has there. So yeah, that was my first impressions.
There was a couple of times where, you know, the meme with the old white guy, he's like taking his headphones off, like kind of disgusted. I feel like that sometimes. Like I couldn't. She would do certain verbally things I listen to audibly as well, and I'm just like, I can't listen to it with headphones. So I just listened to it through my speaker turned like halfway down. I'm like the volume goes up and down throughout the book, and she'll like expand her words for like a while. She's like, I wanted to see how long you do it before I could get annoying. I was like, well, you did it. It was too long. And I was like, the only reason I stuck it out.
What's funny about that
Mhm.
is it was funny about that is when after she said it, she said mission accomplished. And it made me that much more annoyed. Like,
basically, but Jazzy said you stuck it out because you knew her and it was kind of funny, whatever. I stuck it out because we have this podcast. I was just like, I was over. I tried listening to it in the car. I tried listening to the headphones. Only thing that worked is like having it on my phone a little far away from me, turned halfway down. I was just like, I gotta get through it, you know?
there was like after you got over like the way she was speaking, at least for me, there were a lot of relatable stories in the book.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And speaking of like podcasts, since we're on her right now, I did not realize the first time I was acquainted with Phoebe Robinson was the stand-up like kind of sketch show she does with her friend Jessica.
Jessica Williams.
I forget Williams, yeah. I forgot her last name, but the Two Dope Queens show. And I didn't realize that was based off of a podcast, Two Dope Queens, they had done for a while. And I tried to go back and see if they were still a thing, but it looks like they stopped in 2019. So yeah, that was their last episode. But it was interesting to me that, you know, her whole journey where she wanted to be an actor, and then she wanted to be a stand-up comic, and then she was writing the blog, and then she wanted to be a novelist, and then she had a podcast. I was like, this is interesting. Like, it's very relatable for a millennial. Like, you kind of have your toes in so many different things to kind of find your path. So yeah, I thought that was cool.
Something else, you spoke about her being a millennial, and hear this in 2016 too. Some of the things she said were very much like, I think something shifted drastically from this time that she's speaking of, and then 2020. And that big drastic thing it was, we're not putting up with this shit anymore. Like, the world hasn't exactly gotten better, but we're not tolerating it anymore. And I think some of the most cringe-worthy things is like her explaining the racism that she endured and how she just took it like, this is just how it is. I don't have the flexibility to be a full emotional human. I don't have the ability to speak up when I'm being treated badly, and I just have to deal with it. And I think a whole lot of Black people post 2020 was like, no, you don't. You don't got to do that. Regardless of the repercussions, just do it because like your mental health is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
her story about her waiting at the picture counter for her frame. I was like, I can't even sit through this story to her while you were waiting for 10 minutes and they waited on 3 other people and you just stood there. I'm like, if you don't get up there and get some help, that's I can't believe that.
At the same time, I relate to it. Yeah. She is me in 2016. I was doing that same stuff, just grinning and bearing it and just sucking it all down and just doing what you can to maintain your mental health right then and there. Not thinking about how this can impact you long term. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because we're talking about a lot of the same stuff that we did in our last episode. But from her point of view, like we said, she's a comedian. So did that take away? I know Joy, like me, you kind of didn't relate to her humor, but did you think like bringing humor into it, the conversation in general, made it more relatable, less relatable? Like, did you feel like she was making light of it? Like, what do you guys think about using comedy to talk about it.
I never felt like she was making light of anything. I think it's a way of coping. I think that our family in particular, we're very funny. And even when we're hurt, we're making jokes, you know? So I don't mind the comedy. It's just when it slips into being annoying and annoying your audience, I don't get it. And that's pretty much where I was at. Like I understood the stories. I loved hearing about them and I could relate to them. It was, I like the comedy. It's just some of the delivery I didn't care for it. So,
From a
Okay.
comedic standpoint, I didn't feel like she made light of it. She even mentioned it in the book where she said, like, this is my coping mechanism, like Joy mentioned. But something that I didn't particularly like is how she delivered it. I feel like this book was written for white people. Like she kept addressing white people, and she talked to Black people, kind of, but it was almost like white people. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, and I don't think that's who the target audience is here. I think the title is a little misleading for the way she delivered the message.
And especially when she kept saying, you bought this book, so you're here already, so listen to it. I'm like, well, actually, I rented it from the library. So. Yeah. What about you, Jan?
Yeah, it kind of seemed like she was trying to explain Black people to white people in a way.
In a book for
Especially
Black women, I feel like too. Like how that's it.
Yeah. I don't want to necessarily say pandering, but it kind of seemed like that in some ways. Even though I could still relate, like the story she told about Ice Cube and how all Black people know he can't act. It was like, but white people keep talking about how he can't act, so now we have to support him. And funny enough, I was thinking that same thing about this book. Like, girl, you don't even know. I feel like that was early on when I was still kind of annoyed by her Valley Girl accent she was pretending to have. So, yeah, she was spot on with that though. The fact that she said it was a Black secret, that's not really a secret. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was funny too, and she was like, I don't know where the Black people keep the secrets, but it's there. I like that part. That made me laugh.
So she kept talking about, I'm going to say this one thing and then I want to get into the part of the book that I did like, but she kept talking about how she was going to talk about pop culture references throughout the book. And I feel like I didn't get any of her references.
Yeah. Really?
Like I had to look up so many of them, especially when she was talking about Reese. And the album cover, she was looking over her shoulder. I had to look that up. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I had to just stop because I was thinking, okay, she's from a different place. So maybe it's just like regional. And then they said she was from Cleveland. And I was like, wait, why don't I get any of your references? And it says I think she's 38 or something. So she's older than us, but not that much older. I just didn't get it. Like, girl, you must have grew up with your grandma or something. But yeah, for some reason, I just didn't get any of them. What else did you guys have to look up, or is that the only one?
Honestly, I'm so used to references that I don't get. I'm just like, oh, that's why I didn't understand and keep it moving. I didn't look up any of them. If I got it, I got it. If I didn't, I was like, oh.
I got all of her references with the exception of Reese. That was the only one I researched, and I could not find anything on a Reese from the 90s who was an R&B singer. I didn't find anything. Maybe I was spelling it wrong.
I found it. It's spelled R-E-S, and I had to like look up the whole album cover, and I went back and rewound it, and like, yeah, R-E-S, Reese, and I think the album was I Don't Care, or I forget now, but I saw the album cover. She was looking over her shoulder, and I was like, I don't recognize this person at all.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I just found it. Thank you for telling me that. And also, I didn't know who that was either. But yeah, very interesting. I know the one where she talked about how when Zendaya were, was it blocks to a Grammy situation, and it was like, oh, she looks like she smells.
They said that she smelled.
Yeah. Yeah, so all the controversial things that happened when she mentioned, I knew all the references. And it's funny because like I always feel like as Black women, we take note of all these things. Like I don't watch the red carpet anything. I don't like watch award shows really. But when these things happen and it pertains to like a Black woman, like I'm just add that to my repertoire of something that I need to be aware of. This is how we are perceived.
Right. Like put in your back
Because
pocket.
it's so rare. Exactly. It's so rare where people are just upfront and honest with us. And we just deal with so much passive aggressive gaslighting that it's almost like a survival mechanism, being aware of these different pop culture references, at least when it pertains to like Black women in a negative light. But for the most part, yeah, I knew her references that she had.
Yeah, I guess I was exaggerating. Some of them I got, but there was one she was talking about like James Brown in a mugshot with his hair messed up, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I had to look that up too. So
Oh
yeah, there were quite a few I
wow.
had to look up. Yeah. And she
Interesting.
said, like, oh, Black people know this. And I hate when people say that and I don't know it because I'm like, shit. Like, this much closer to getting that blank card revoked.
That's another
There's
thing
been
too that felt like the pandering to me. The whole she has a whole section about how she hates like having to be the person to speak for all Black people when you're doing a lot of that in this book. You're not speaking from your experience, which those are the parts of the story that I enjoy the most. But she does a lot of, well, all Black people, this is what Black people think when you, yeah, to white people.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something that was a huge part of the book. I feel like almost 50%, which is her hair journey. What did you guys think about that?
No, something about that part. I really like that she discussed it. I really like what she said about it. It's just that sometimes, like, and she did this a couple times. And I don't mean to be overly critical of this book. You know, I liked what she talked about. You know, but I just feel like it was a little long run. You know, the list of people that she had to mention and like, you know, throughout the decades and like all the different hairstyles. You know what I mean? And she went through like poetic justice and this one was the perm, this was the Supremes, and this and this. I'm like, girl, talk about your hair journey. We're good. That's all we need, you know? So I don't know. I just feel like it went on for a little while, you know?
I love
Okay.
that
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
I love that part of it. Like, how often do you see a journey of pop culture for Black women, particular to our hair? I feel like it's such an unknown thing for like most of our society. But I love she talked about Halle Berry and she talked about how like each of these hairstyles like impacted Black women. And I think, Joy, you probably weren't as interested because this is probably one of those things like all these references are over your head, youngin. But those are all momentous things where it wasn't just, oh, Halle Berry changed her hair and it was just in this movie, Swordfish, by the way. But our whole everything changed. She said all your aunties had that hairstyle. Mom had that hair. I said, Mom had it. Auntie Pumpkin had like all of our aunts had this haircut. So it's not just something where, you know, she's relating to this and saying this is how my hair journey is like this was culturally how things changed for us in the 90s, of course. So yeah, I like that part.
My thing is though, it's like it's not about the references. I feel like those are momentous occasions in the Black community. We know about them. I knew about them. It was just like it was one of those things again. It was like you're explaining to Black people what Black people, like a lot of Black people already know. You know? I was like, yeah, and yeah.
I feel like I already knew about it, but I like seeing in a timeline the way that she did. I'll be honest, like I felt like the hair part of this book was probably the best part of this book. Once we moved away from it, I felt like, and it's funny because when I was listening to it, I was like, this is crazy that I'm halfway through this book and we're still talking about this. Like, is this just a hair book? And then she got into other things and it was fine, but I feel like I was more engaged when she was talking about her hair journey because she had her whole own hair journey in there, but was still putting it out like a timeline of like Black history moments with the hair. And which I think is funny that you call Joy a youngin because I like feel like I fit right in between you two like I am because I've never seen the movie Swordfish, but I know that hairstyle. But I know it like the first time I've noticed her with that hairstyle was in the Flintstones. Like I don't know, like I thought that was the first time she showed up with that hairstyle. But I knew the hairstyle still, you know? So when I was listening to it, the only thing going through my mind was, this is the good hair documentary that we deserve. Like, I hate that Chris Rock made that hair documentary when I feel like he had a lot of good information, but at the same time, he was still so condescending and like kind of abusive to Black women and like making jokes still. Like, it's not funny though. Like, you're making this like documentary to make Black women feel better about their own natural hair while still making them the butt of the joke. Whereas I feel like she did the same thing, maybe not as detailed because it wasn't a whole documentary, but she actually had her own experience going through that and like how she didn't like her hair and how she had to like, or she didn't have to, but she spent time in her classroom looking at other women's hair and saying, I wish I had more of this hair type or more of that hair type, until she finally like found acceptance with how she looked in herself. I love that. And I wish that would have been the whole documentary and that Chris Rock wasn't involved in it at all.
I love that. And one thing I will add to that, what you said, Jan, that I liked about her hair journey is how she was able to pinpoint specific racist things that happened to her because of her hair. And I was impressed with that when we read the Elizabeth Leba book too, because she also had experiences where she was like, oh, you have feel a certain way about me because of my hair, not because of my skin color. Like it's rare that I've had moments where I know that I'm being mistreated because of my hair. So I feel like that speaks volumes about like just how much journey work you've done on yourself and just being able to understand why you're being treated a certain way. The whole spiel she had about the reality TV show that she was on, and they didn't like her picture, and they said she looked awful, and she said it's because of my hair. I had a little fro, and then she went back and said, okay, if you don't understand, here's the history of the little fro and why this is so like appalling to white people. And I didn't like that whole experience for her. It was super cringe. I understood why she didn't like fight in that moment because yeah, editing, don't do that to yourself. But also like she knew, I don't know if she knew at that moment what it was, but maybe after some introspection and thinking about it, she knew why they treated her that way.
Yeah, that was an awful moment. And I don't know, I can't even speak to the rage you feel when you hear about these experiences happening to other women, especially by other women. That's another thing that I wanted to bring up, just the intersectionality of like her being Black and being a woman, and how that woman judge doubled down on what he said about her looking old when it had nothing to do with why she was there. Like, why is that like what you say immediately? Is that you don't like my picture when I'm standing right here and I'm making jokes? Like, judge my comedy. Why are you talking about how I look older than your mother on this picture? Like, lies immediately because you're a Black woman. You don't look older than his mother. Just
That's
saying.
what I'm saying. I was like, I doubt that that's true at all. I feel like all three of them were
Burn.
haters. That's crazy.
The most offensive part is when she said, you come off as the smartest person in the room. You want to like not do that anymore. And the first thing I thought of was my last story I told on our last our last call, where I had someone just honestly say, I don't feel confident in a room in a meeting with Jasmine. And that is a real thing, like white woman jealousy.
Mhm.
And they will make sure to try to dim your light. So
That's what you
I just
said
thought that was
too.
interesting.
That's another one you just put in your pocket. Like, oh, you show me behind the screen a little bit. Got you. I got it. Mm-hmm. I thought about that incident too. About that story. I was like, Jasmine just said this some shit. You know, when she brought that up too, she was like, you know, woman solidarity, Black women and white men, women always work together. And I was like, yeah, sometimes to our detriment. Like, like, I don't know if that was just like from recently when we've been like kind of going back into ourselves a little bit as Black women. But I was just like, I don't know why, girl. So yeah. I don't know why you expected that help.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like majority of the time if I'm working with another woman in the office, and I worked in finance for the majority of my career, I didn't work with a lot of women. Like finance is a male dominated industry. So when I did see another woman, white, Indian, Asian, black, whatever, like we did have a certain solidarity. And the higher that you go up, for some reason, the less you can like rely on that, which is sad, but that's just how it is. Like when I first got in, we were all like close. And then as I got to manager, like in other like levels, it's just, yeah, everybody for themselves. So
That's true.
I can see why, like to bring it back around, I can see why she would rely on it, but yeah, you can't always. And it's disappointing when you can't, because I feel like I always give people the benefit of the doubt, but it takes less and less for them. Like they get less chances with me. Like now before someone were to like screw me over, I'd say, okay, maybe that was a mistake. I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and give them a couple more chances. Now they get one, and then you have to prove to me that you're not trying to screw me over. I've just been burned too many times. So yeah.
And that sucks too, because I want to add on to what you said, Joy. Why would she trust it? Because you have to. We're already like working against the patriarchy, right? There are plenty of men who don't want us, men of all colors, by the way, who don't want us to succeed, who don't want us to grow. And a lot of times, all you have are other women. And I would say, like, Black women, for the most part, like I see another Black woman, I'm like, yes, I got your back. Please hope that you have mine. Although I've heard some stories before where that's not the case, and that makes me very sad. But you need that. You need to have that camaraderie in order to be able to succeed in your career. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who want to make sure, even at their own demise, that you don't succeed. And that is just bizarre to me, that there are people out there. Yeah, you're willing to risk your career and your well-being to like screw me over. Like, man, like just go to therapy. Just go to therapy.
I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of the opposite of Jan, which is surprising. It's like, the only people I let in immediately is Black women. I'm like, you're gonna have my back. Hopefully, that's the ones I give the opportunity to hurt me. Everyone else, I have that wall up. I'm like, if I'm at work, oh, hey, girl, that's it. No, we're not talking about my weekend or anything. Like, how are you today? That's it. And then like if you do something or say something, I'm like, not surprised. That's why that wall is up. And the only people that I give the chance to actually like get to know like further than just like my coworkers are other Black women, which isn't very often because I'm in Abilene, Texas. But that wall isn't there as often as it is for everybody else. But that's today in 2023 too. So
question for you, Joy. How often have you been the only, not even Black woman, only Black person at an organization?
Here in Texas, 100%. Over when I lived in DC, I was a nanny, so it was just me, and I worked for a Black family. But living in DC, like doing like different jobs, like customer service, it was a good amount of us. So it just depended on where I was. But here right now, there's nothing but me, and then white women, Asian women. It's fine. I like them, but that sisterhood isn't there, like we have a good time and
Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
What I was gonna say is that there weren't any other Black women.
Yeah.
There was one other Black woman, and she was a manager, and I eventually moved to her team, and she was like the best manager I've still had to this day. So that was awesome. But yeah, there weren't any. There were, like I said, barely any women there at all. So when I first started out, there was just none.
Yeah.
Period. And I would love to say that there was like some that moved in, because I was a broker and there just wasn't any in Austin, which is where I was at the time. Now, in other centers, I can call and maybe talk to another Black woman, but it's not like we were there in the office together, So that would be the reason. Like I just wouldn't have had an opportunity to open up to anyone if that were the case. So,
and not for nothing. There's Black people here. It's just I have to seek them out in different like Black people groups. And that's kind of where I was like, oh, here's our daily frustrations. This is what we talk about. We meet up and have like game nights and stuff. But at work, it's purely work, So,
And that's so hard though. Like, you're a human
yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's just, it's a tough balancing act, especially if you're in a male dominated industry. I know my first job out of college, I worked for a dealership group in their corporate office. It wasn't a big corporate office, only 30 people, but I was the only woman who worked in automotive. I was the youngest person by at least, 7 or 8 years. And I was the only Black person. So add all those things in, I definitely got treated differently. And a lot of people made it seem, there were some days where I know I was treated differently because I'm a woman working in automotive. How dare she? There's other days I was treated differently because, like, I've been in this business before you were even born. How dare you try to tell me what to do?
Oh.
And then there are instances where it's like, you're a Black woman. Like, how dare you have confidence in walking here and be this type of person? So, going into an environment where there are people who are vicious, I'm just going to put that, they're vicious. Like, they are looking and counting down the days until I leave. Like, I had someone who emailed my boss on my 90th day to say, I don't think Jasmine's working out. I think we need to let her go. Someone I saw him like bold. Twice. Yes, I seen him like twice in the 90 days I was there. And yeah, he just didn't like me for whatever reason. And luckily I had a boss who had my back. He copied me on the email and said, Jasmine's doing great. Thanks for your opinion. No one asked for. Do your job and leave us alone. That's just what he replied to him. But I was so thrown off because my whole demeanor is I'm friendly. If someone asks me for help, I'm going to do what I can to make sure I can help them. I'm here to make sure that y'all make money. And for someone to just be behind my back, working to kick me out of the company is just, it's bizarre. So yeah, in those occasions.
Did you before that he didn't like you?
He smiled. He shook my hand. He was so happy to meet me. The nicest guy you ever meet. And I heard people complaining about him. Yeah, he's not that great. And I'm I don't even see it. He seems like a nice guy until I saw that email that went through, which he didn't last long at the company shortly after that. But what I'm saying is, in that environment where it's mostly men, there's probably 2 women in management positions. And this whole, it was only 30 people on corporate, but there was hundreds of people who worked within the dealership group. And there's only 2, maybe 3 women in leadership positions. I'm one of them. And I'm the only Black one, and I'm the youngest one. So of course, the other woman who was there, one of the other women was like, yes, I got your back. Let me know if you need anything. It's tough out here. Here are the things that I had to deal with. Because that's how you survive. It's a survival mechanism.
I think it's true too. I think it's important to mention that you both work in very male-dominated fields in finances, and what we said, it was the automobile sales. I work in a very woman-centric with kids. I work in childcare, so it's a whole different minefield. It's mostly women. I've seen one man who was our complete director here and in Dallas. But their circumstances are a little different when it comes to women, what a woman-run kind of company. So it's just oh yeah, it's just niceties and I do my job well. And it's a whole different level of just not trusting each other, sort of, and just kind of bitchiness that naturally happens. So it's just yeah, that all is up, girl. I can't trust none of them. So. Yeah, but luckily there's another Black girl that's getting hired. So I'm yes, new best friend, let's go. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting because Jazz, you said that happened to you where someone spoke up against you, that you didn't even know didn't like you. So, and that he was a man. So I think no matter men or women, you're gonna have that. I can think of an instance where when I was a broker on the phones, we had weekly team meetings where we really didn't need to have this meeting, but the boss wanted to be the boss, so we had to go to the team meeting. So we did icebreakers every week, even though it was only 7 people on the team and we knew each other very well.
Because the icebreakers.
Well, we were doing an icebreaker. We had to go around and say like something we liked about everybody. Just ridiculous icebreakers. And the one guy got to me and said, I like Janice's hair a lot. And I just was going to say, oh, thank you, and move on. And one girl on our team scoffed so loudly. It was like, really?
What a bitch.
And and it was like so uncomfortable. She kind of caught herself. It was like, oh, I just meant that, because there's so many things to like about Janice. That's just such a superficial thing to like.
Clean it up. Come on, wrap it up, girl. Wrap it up. Clean out your desk by midnight. Go. Let's go.
Thinking about it now, I can't do anything but laugh. But he just kind of awkwardly was like, yeah, I like that it's versatile and, it's different all the time. It's cool. That was so awkward for everybody. Like, normally it's awkward for me because everybody will laugh, but everyone was looking around like, did that really just happen?
Am I part of it?
And I can say that was a unique experience, and that it made everybody in the room awkward. And it was a little satisfying because of that.
You know what? That's good.
Like, everyone's back in this, just like I normally have to do.
That's what they talked about in that last book. They're just like, listen, it's not my job to be uncomfortable because if you're racist, I'm glad she got uncomfortable. And I know she didn't say some shit like that again, especially about you.
But the reason I bring it up is because I had no idea that she disliked me before this, or at least didn't like my hair. She would regularly come to my desk and just sit and talk about nonsense, and I just drown her out while I'm doing my job. Like, you would have never known. I don't think I was being rude to her necessarily, but I would have never known that she would have done something like that. So, yeah.
I think that's the scary part about it. Yeah, it's very covert. And the people who are the worst are the ones who are smiling in your face and saying like nice things and like going out of their way to be nice to you in a way that feels artificial. And you're like, okay, please keep your distance. Just keep your distance from me. I mean, it's very obvious what you're doing.
It's like that meme with the guy. He goes, huh.
Yeah. Like I said, I can only laugh when I think back on it, but at the time it was like a roller coaster of emotions. Like, first, like, oh, someone's calling out my hair in a good way. That's interesting. And then to hear her scoff like, this bitch.
I would have been petty after that. Every time I changed
I'm waiting for the laugh.
I'm like, what do you think they had this time? Got a wig on, straight, just more your type, more your flavor. Yeah.
Oh man, I would have scoffed when whoever said anything about her. I like so-and-so's personality.
Were you not at the icebreaker last week? Come on.
Oh man. But we can laugh about it now.
I would have been laughing then too. All the way to the bank. I'm like, hostile work environment, baby. Good times.
It's too funny. All right. So one of the questions I had written about a lot of her experiences were relatable. I think we have talked about that a lot, but were there any instances that she talked about or experiences that she talked about that you related more so than others?
Yes. So, really quick story. This is my second time reading this book. And the first time I read it, I remember being annoyed specifically with how she narrated it. And also she had a sniffle, which I don't know if y'all picked up on a sniffle, but it was driving me freaking nuts. She'll be talking and going, and I'm like, oh my God, if she sniffles one more time. But despite despite that, there was one part in the story that I felt like, yes, people need to hear this. And it stuck with me. I didn't realize that I got it from this book. And that is, she said in the book, when you have to explain a racist event to someone and they don't believe you and they make it so like they're gaslighting you when you're saying something horrible that you went through. it's worse than actually experiencing the racism itself. And that's something that has stuck with me for years. Like I said, I read this in 2016 when it first came out, and I couldn't have said that better. And that's something that I've experienced so many times, and it's way more disappointing because now because you're not going to just say what something racist that happened to you to some random stranger. You're saying it to someone you care about, someone you felt like was a safe space. And when that someone gaslights you, well, are you sure you just weren't on your period? Or are you sure that it was racism? They probably were having a bad day. Like, do you even know who this person is? And you're like taking up their side for it. So I love that she shared that story and she was able to really spell it out, like, this is what it is, because I've experienced it so many disappointing times, and it is so true. It is worse than experiencing the racism.
You know what's funny about that too is I completely agree with everything you said. And we talked about this before on this podcast when we talked about the wedding date. Where we talked about Drew Nichols, even though he was toxic AF. um, one of his redeeming qualities was that every time she told him about something she was concerned about with racism or told him about a racist experience, there was no, are you sure? Or maybe you're just like, it was immediately, oh, I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me. What can I do? You know, like there was no gaslighting involved, which was a huge redeeming quality for him. So shout out to Drew Nichols.
I can't remember that man's name. That was like episode 2.
You, of course, you don't. You didn't remember it when we did the episode.
Well, girl. I did want to say one thing that I did. I wanted to acknowledge what she said when she was in high school. When she, even with her hair wasn't natural, she had to like processed and everything. And she still wasn't being noticed by like the white boys there because she went to a predominantly white high school. Then she was like, I didn't want to go up to a junior prom because no one was asking me, the black girl out. And I was like, oh. And like, I didn't have that experience, but I was like, I heard it multiple times before. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit because I keep seeing the same thing even today, that there's a lot of like people who don't appreciate the beautiful black girls in high schools and asking them out and things. And they feel like they're missing a huge part of their high school, journey.
I don't know if you read Gabrielle Union's book. I think we're going to need more wine. And she said something very similar. She grew up in she went to a very white high school and felt very rejected because she was the only black girl. And no one was asking her out.
It's not they were ugly. Like I'm sure if we were to look at their pictures and everything, because she was at herself, she's like, I wasn't the cutest kid, but I wasn't hideous. I'm like, that's not the case. You get basic bitches all the time, boyfriends in high school. It just sucks. You had that experience, So yeah. Just wanted
something that it's funny. So really quick, something that reminds me of is I had a friend tell me that she was having trouble making friends with, some people in her friend circle. And I thought it was the weirdest thing because she is the friendliest person I know. Like everyone who meets her loves her. And I'm like, who are these people? Like, why don't they love you? Like, that makes no sense at all. And she's Latina. And the women who weren't very like warm with her were white. And I explained to her like an experience that I have had is that when you are a person of color and you try to befriend a white person who is not into it because they're very afraid of the fact that you're black, they kind of keep you at arm's reach, right? They don't say anything rude to you, or they're cordial with you when they have to be, but they're not going to invite you to anything. They're not going to like say, hey, what is your thoughts on this topic? They just want you to like just be there. Mm-hmm. And they'll be the first ones to call out like, hey, I have a friend of color. Mm-hmm. But that's it. That's your only purpose of being there, which, she had the whole part of this book that was about how do you know when you're the token black friend? And that reminds me of that when you say that, Joy, because it is a very weird phenomenon and it's hard to describe it because they didn't exactly do anything to you, but you do notice that they're a lot friendlier and more vocal and warmer with these other women who are more reserved than you are, and they just happen to be white. So yeah, that's unfortunate. And that it just plays out in the dating scene as well. That's what it reminds me of.
Yep. Okay, well, any other questions or topics you guys were just burning to talk about that I didn't bring up?
Something I did want to mention that I don't know how I feel about it. Just once I figured out she was a podcaster, I feel like the book itself was like almost a big podcast. Like they could have been completely separate podcasts, the different chapters of the book. And I was like, that's kind of cute. Like I like it. Like it's like a really long podcast. I feel like I'm listening to. I don't normally listen to a single woman podcast though. Like it's usually back and forth. So I was like, this book is kind of like a long podcast, you know? That was interesting.
So the way I thought about it was not necessarily like a podcast, but like a stand-up comedy routine. That's what it read as for me. Like she went through different stories and kind of made jokes of her everyday life. And she even said, I think, now that I think about it like that, like this was a conversation, just like in stand-up comedy. Like it's a conversation, even though I'm the only one talking. Like, yeah, I guess. So yeah, that's interesting. It definitely didn't feel like other memoirs, to your point, Joy.
Oh no, yeah. And it didn't feel like a self-help book either, like the last one we've done. Somewhere in the middle.
No,
there were no stats in this book.
One thing I will say about her delivery, although I think all three of us agree it was a little annoying, but there's still some parts of her that I really liked. I liked that she let her free flag fly. And I'm like, oh, you're telling me all the things that you have no shame about. Okay. I already feel really close to you. So I feel like that's something that kind of worked for her. Like she's weird. And once you get past that, I'm like, okay, you're weird. I get it. We can just keep moving on. But one part I wanted to call out that I actually liked and I wasn't expecting to like it, I kind of had my guard up, was her friend that she had write the note. Her white friend, the white guy who wrote the notes. And I'm like, you put a white dude on a book called Don't Touch My Hair. I don't know how this is going to go, but it was actually really good. He talked about how he never thought of something he does as white. And
he was offended.
Yeah. But I liked how he talked through, like, here are things in white history that you can be proud of, but I'm not going to give credit to any white rappers. And you're a smart person. I'm not going to tell you why that is. And I liked his whole, it was a very respectful piece and I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. And can I just say, when he started off that story talking about an artisan mail shop, my thoughts were, that's the whitest shit I have ever heard of. And then the fact that his black friend was like, that's the whitest thing I've ever done. Like, yes, okay, I'm not alone in that.
I was like, is this for real? Is there such a thing as artisanal mail shop?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure. Go to your local gentrified neighborhood. I'm sure you'll find one or two.
Who loves mail that much? Jesus.
The whites. I'm going to Google it.
Wise question. Mayo is like one of those unspoken things. I'm like, I will put it on a sandwich, but don't tell me that it's there. I will gag.
There are shops. The first one I pulled up is in Brooklyn, but yeah, there are artisanal mayonnaise shops. Yeah.
Wow.
And I would just have to go.
No.
I have no interest in going to an artisanal. What are you putting your mayo on? Like, what is it besides like tuna fish, egg salad, and a sandwich? Where else could you possibly be putting mayo in?
I bet they have one for a charcuterie board.
Salad dressing.
Oh yeah.
Ew.
The charcuterie board with the mayo, different mayos.
Ew.
They had a butter one. I'm sure there's a mayo one. I'm sure of it.
Butter makes sense. Butter is delicious in all flavors.
All right, I think we're regressing, guys.
Oh, sorry.
So, after the conversation, is anybody changing their rating?
I think I'll bump it up to a 3. I liked the book. It was just the annoying little bits that it just kind of like gave me an off-putting feeling sometimes about it, you know? But I can't give it anything
Yeah.
more than that just because like the books I really like, I've given 4s and 5 on here, so I can't do that.
That's fair. I think mine would stay at a 3. And the reason, I guess I never really got into the reasoning for why I gave it a 3. I gave it a 3 because again, I feel like she should have did the Good Hair documentary. Like if she did that documentary as a book, I would have been completely happy if that's all it was. But I did listen to the audiobook and I feel like I would have liked it a little bit more if I had read it because of the tone. And that's a huge experience for me in reading the books or like listening to a book is the tone of the narrator. So if I don't like it, and it's not the person who actually wrote the book that's narrating, sometimes I'll just turn it off and like read the actual book because I want to be fair in my rating. And if it's annoying me, then I'm not going to be. But it's her book, it's her fault. So
Yeah.
Agreed.
I agree. I'm keeping mine the same at 3.5. And I think this was her first book that she wrote. She's since written 3 more books. And I liked her enough. So this is her first book. My first blog post was trash. So I'm going to just throw it out there. Like, good on her. She wrote a book. It was her first one. Despite the things that annoyed me, I still recommend this book to people because she has some things in it that still stick with me years later. So it did have an impact on me. And it made me like her for it. And she's weird in some ways that I am not. But you know what? I love the complexity that it gives more Black people. She's a blurred all day, and she is not afraid to talk about that. So yeah, I keep it at a 3.5.
All right.
that's fair. Yeah. Okay. Well, that about wraps up this conversation. Let's talk about our book next week, which is The Violin Conspiracy. 1 second, I'll give you a synopsis.
I could do some violin music while we wait.
Take a sip.
Okay,
Okay, you already messed up. That's enough.
all right.
That's not violin music. I just want you to know that it's not.
Violins go like that.
La, 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 la,
It
la,
obviously goes.
You got it. You got it, Jared. Perfect. Keep it.
I thought so. All right, cool. All right, enough. Come on now. A mystery about a Black classical musician whose family heirloom violin is stolen on the eve of the most prestigious classical music competition in the world. Ray McMillan loves playing the violin more than anything, and nothing will stop him from pursuing his dream of becoming a professional musician. Not his mother, who thinks he should get a real job, not the fact that he can't afford a high caliber violin, not the racism inherent in the classical music world. And when he makes the startling discovery that his great grandfather's fiddle is actually a priceless Stradivarius. Stradivarius. Stradivarius.
Oh
His
my
star
goodness.
begins to rise. Jasmine, shut up. I'm trying to read it.
Oh boy.
Enough. Joy, shut up.
Joy, your
How
laugh is
many
very
other people?
ignorant. Joy's laugh
Yeah.
is ignorant.
It's very ignorant.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just feel like Jen wanted to pull out a
Good
metal
Lord.
chair on Jazz for a second there.
Shut up, Joy. Can I continue? Christ. All right. Can you at least mute yourself, asshole? Now, Jasmine with the Stradivarius. All right. All right. A priceless Stradivarius. His star begins to rise. Then with the international, fuck. Is it Chiskowski?
You told us to shut the fuck up, so I'm figuring it out.
Joy, I'm trying to get off of this recording. Now mute yourself immediately before I murder you. And Jasmine, unmute yourself and tell me how to say it. Joy don't know shit about how to pronounce shit, but she won't shut up.
Can you? I didn't hear it. Can you try to say it again?
Joy, mute yourself. Yes. It is. Fuck, where'd it go? The International Chiskowski Competition.
Chiskowski.
I'm going to say Chiskowski. It starts with a T.
Oh.
All right, I'm continuing.
Okay.
Then with the International Chiskowski Competition, the Olympics of the classical music, fast approaching, his prized family heirloom is stolen. Ray is determined to get it back, but now his family and the descendants of the man who once enslaved Ray's great-grandfather are each claiming that the violin belongs to them. With the odds stacked against him and the pressure mounting, will Ray ever see his violin again? All right, so that is The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum that we'll be reading next week.
Just really quick, a Stradivarius violin, the most expensive Stradivarius violin is worth $20 million for reference.
What is so
They're very
special?
expensive.
What's so special about them?
They're handcrafted. I wouldn't get into it, but they're the most expensive violin, and there are there are several movies about Stradivarius violins. So yeah, they're a thing.
First I'm hearing of it, but I'm excited to read it because it's
Yeah.
our second thriller that we've ever read on the podcast. So
I'm a
Should be
band
fun.
girl. I love my clarinet. But violin, I love violin to like listen to violin. So I'm excited to read this book.
I would dare you to play one note on a violin, on a clarinet. I will give you $100.
A girl, I could play you a whole song on Twinkle Twinkle. The ants come marching in.
Not the twinkle twinkle.
Pull out your wallets. I got you.
All right. And on that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. Jazz, do you want to let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my blog, Blogging Money Life. And that's at Blogging Money Life on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. And you can go to our blog, bloggingmoneylife.com.
And YouTube. You didn't mention that one.
And YouTube, of course. I'm a YouTuber. Yes, you can find us on YouTube. And we have videos about our journey moving from the United States to Costa Rica, as well as tips on how to grow your blog and make money.
What day do you have your live Q&As on?
I do a live blogging Q&A the last Wednesday of every month.
All right. So if you guys want blogging tips, make sure you tune in.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy. Where can they find us?
So on TikTok and Twitter, we're Black Girl Reads Pod. The Black is spelled BLK. BLK Girl Reads Pod. And on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, we're Black Girl Reads Podcast. So add that cast, but it's still BLK at the beginning.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining. This was a great conversation.